Hello, thought we'd do a very quick update on the Optigan. It's been a few days since the last video. A lot more cleaning's gone on. The keyboard circuit has completely been stripped and all the contacts cleaned. They were all pretty good anyway. We're still trying to suss out why the keyboard section isn't working. I've been round this, you can see the state of the room. I've been round this with a little oscilloscope. And I can get signal from the chord side and the rhythm side fine. We know that's working. But the keyboard side, I can pick it up from the optical sensor, but somewhere along the line we're getting lost. Up at the top I fitted a new capacitor and bridge rectifier which has been heat sunk and bolted to the chassis. Not that it really generates any heat anyway, but I didn't really like the way the old one was done with the rectifier just kind of tacked onto the terminal strip there, flapping around. It's not really what I'm keen on. A couple of problems we've had. I thought at one point there was smoke coming out of the motor, so I've disconnected the motor and run it without briefly, and I thought, this was yesterday, I thought, yeah, great, no problem. All working okay, it's got to be the motor. Then I pressed the pedal down, it made a crackling noise and smoke started billowing out the back. So unfortunately, if I can just go and get it because it's in the other room. Okay, that was good timing because the camera battery ran out. These two 0.75 ohm resistors have burnt up, and that is because I can't remember exactly which, but one of the output drivers on this side has gone dead short both ways. One has gone partial short. I found someone else on the Optigan.com website that seems to have the same problem. I'm guessing that these old Motorola transistors are just notorious for that at this stage in the game, really. It's all 1972 marked. They're all complete unobtainium. So the question I have to ask now is, obviously with the power supply, well, very basic power supply, basically a couple of diodes and smoothing caps being on that board, I could reinstall that board but remove the output drivers to the speakers. The board has been recapped, by the way, and the rhythm side, when it was working, did sound better, but there was still the same amount of hum. So I always suspected there was a fault on this side. But the question remains really, do we try and find a couple of replacement output drivers for this, or even four? If that's not possible, basically the preamp is in this board with a couple of trimmers. So we've got two options. We could either fit a modern power amp board, something like an LM396 or something a little bit more powerful. I don't think it would need much more than 20 watts a channel, and feed a modern power amp board from this preamp, and in that case we could build just a basic AC filter supply to drive it, and rectifier. I think most of the boards I've seen have got the rectifier on the amp board itself. Or do we not bother with the amp board, disconnect the output drivers from this completely, leave it as a power supply to power the op amps on the preamp board, and then fit, for example, a transformer output to drive a balanced line output, so that instead of using the speakers we can use it for recording. Depends what the owner wants, really. I know he was keen to look into a line out circuit, and the big benefit of that would be that obviously if we want to record it, the motor noise isn't an issue, because if we were recording it with mics, then the motor on this thing makes a racket. But when I thought the motor had gone up in smoke, I spent a lot of time looking into the possibility of fitting a small DC motor here with a rubber idler wheel that would drive this wheel, and disconnecting and removing the motor completely. Now I'm confident I can reattach the motor, because it wasn't the motor that was smoking. The smoke was coming up from here, but it was actually the amp board that was going up. I've always had my suspicions about this thing. Despite recapping it, it does look like, yeah, the output drivers are not good news, really. So that's where I am at the moment. I need to reattach the motor, and then speak to the owner and consider what we want to do. with this amp board? Do we attempt to repair it, or do we disconnect the output drivers and either fit a modern amp or ditch that completely and either fit this for a power supply for the op amp or build a regulated supply? I've measured 30 volts across these, so that could be a plus and minus 15 volt drive, which we could build a regulated supply for quite easily. I think going on that the outputs on the transformers are probably 24 volts AC, but I probably should put a small load across the secondary of the transformer and just meter that out, see what the AC voltages are. So this has been a bit rambly, but I thought I would share a few thoughts as to where I am at the moment. One interesting thing to note is that all the schematics that I've looked at and I've got off the internet might as well be thrown away, because they're completely different to this model. All the models referred to in the schematics don't have op amps. These are all 1972. I mean, these chips are only designed, I believe, in 1971, so it was pretty new technology at the time. The amp board is a single board. Every one I've seen has 2 monoblock amps with massive filter capacitors on, and this is much more condensed. So I may hazard a guess that this isn't a Mattel model. This may be an Optigan model, which was a subsidiary of the minor company that bought the technology from Mattel when they washed their hands of it in 1973. It's pretty unusual. I can't find, apart from one guy mentioning the output drivers, I can't find any other mention of a model that uses a single board amp and op amp chips, 55, 58 chips I believe, all Signetics made, to drive it. So yeah, it's a bit of an oddity, this one. Every picture I've seen from the back as well, the speakers are slightly different to the standard US models as well. So it's not too complicated. It's pretty. I've metered most of the wiring out, and I haven't found any fault with most of the wiring. These can be replaced, I believe, with 1558, which I think are just about still obtainable, but I don't think any of these are faulty. I think all the op amps are fine. But yes, I'd like to do still a little bit more scoping around it, remove the dead output drivers from this, try repowering it up, and see if we can at least get some power on to continue scoping around the keyboard and op amp power supply. Sorry, not power supply, preamp. So that's about all for now. Hopefully we can get a little further with it without smoke.